Thank you for joining us. My name is Bethany McCorkle. I'm the Communication Director for Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost. We're here to talk about crowdfunding on a specific fundraiser. I'm not going to mention the name out of respect to the family, but it is an important topic. So at this point, I'm going to have AG Dave Yost come up. We'll hear from a couple other speakers, and then we'll take questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you for all being here today. I want to begin by publicly expressing my continuing sorrow at the senseless murder of Deputy Henderson. I had the honor of standing witness at his funeral. However, we are not in the Attorney General's office engaged with this case. If we were, some of the things I'm about to say I probably shouldn't say, and I want to make it clear that our non-involvement is a precondition to my presence here today. GoFundMe, which is the common phrase for crowdfunding sites, it's only one of several sites that do that kind of work. GoFundMe actually is a good actor in this matter. One of their competitors is helping to raise money for the defendant in the murder case of Deputy Henderson. And I am appealing to them today to take down this site and to refund the money to the donors. Appealing to them not as a matter of law, because under current Ohio law, there are significant limits to what I can do, but appealing to their sense of conscience, to the people that own and run this site. I would suggest that maybe they ought to listen to the goals of the founders of Google, whose motto early on was, "Don't be evil." This is not a close call. There are things that I can certainly understand why a business might take the position, hey, we are a platform, we're a facility, we don't judge. And that would make a lot of sense. You don't want political popularity or unpopularity to be driving your business decisions. But this isn't a matter that is subject to that kind of a call. This ought to be a thing that everybody, right, left, in the middle, or outside the spectrum altogether, can condemn and say, this is not right. This is not good. We shouldn't be crowdfunding an evildoer. Now, the competitor to this site, GoFundMe, is a good citizen in this matter. They actually have a policy that says we don't do crowdfunding for people who are accused of violent crime. This is a good policy. It is consistent with public policy, and in fact, there were several attempts to start a GoFundMe page for the defendant in this case, and GoFundMe, consistent with their policy, took those pages down as soon as they found them and sent the money back to the donors. That's what should happen here. Well, we have looked, we've had several questions. There was, some of you may remember, the Son of Sam law, the Berkowitz case in New York. This, created laws at the state level around the country. We have one here that prevents the selling of the story for personal gain from the commission of a crime. I've looked at that statute. I've also looked at Title 17 of the Ohio Revised Code, which discusses the rules and requirements around charitable fundraising. And I don't see anything at the moment that jumps out as a clear legal theory under current law. The Son of Sam law was not written. In fact, it was before we had such a thing as crowdfunding, a relatively recent phenomenon. It may well be that the General Assembly of Ohio should undertake to pass a law that would regulate this kind of thing as being contrary to the public interest. It would be, I think, pretty easy to enact a law that made GoFundMe's policy the policy of the state, that you may not do crowdfunding for someone accused of a violent crime. Be that as it may, it is my hope today that the platform will itself, because it is the right thing to do, follow their own path. Their terms of service allow them to be to cancel a page if it's a violation of community standards. I certainly think that the murder of a law enforcement officer is something that would violate this community's standards, and I'm calling upon them to voluntarily do the right thing. Thank you.
At this time, we're going to have Zachary Gottsman come up. He is the attorney representing the Henderson family.
Thank you, Bethany. My name is Zach Gottesman. I am counsel for the Henderson family. First, as an initial matter, I would like to thank General Yost for coming forward to address this disgraceful situation. While the Attorney General has limited tools at his disposal on how to respond to this situation, there are legal and equitable claims available to the family that are more broad and give them more tools at their disposal. It is our intention to pursue all claims at their disposal to the fullest extent possible, because it is shocking to the conscience that Give, Send, Go would host a campaign for fundraising for someone who murdered a Hamilton County Sheriff's deputy. It's a flagrant violation of Ohio public policy that anyone should profit from their criminal acts, and it is our intention as attorneys for the family to take legal actions to put an end to that and to recover any proceeds, ensure that those proceeds are disgorged so that this criminal and his family do not profit based on the death of this deputy. Thank you.
At this time, Chief Wallace, who is also a member of the SHIELD, will come up. He has a statement from the family.
Thank you. First, let me start off by thanking the media for continuing to give the family the privacy they deserve at this time. Above all else, I want to protect the legacy of my husband, Larry Henderson. He was an outstanding deputy, a loving husband, a devoted father, a kind and decent man. It's heartbreaking that his name is now being connected with something so painful and inappropriate, and an attempt by others to benefit from a tragic of a death. Throughout the incredibly difficult time, our family has been overwhelmed by the outpouring love and support from the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, surrounding law enforcement agencies, and most importantly, the community. The compassion and strength has helped carry us through the darkest days, and we are so grateful. What's most important to me is Larry is remembered for how he lived, with honor, courage, and love, not for the circumstances of his death. We hope that moving forward, his memory will continue to inspire others to serve with the same heart integrity that he has always showed. Lastly, I want to thank Attorney General David Yost for his leadership, understanding as we navigate this horrific tragedy. His support means more than words can express. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. At this time, we will take questions from the media.
These fundraisers claim to be set up by people related to Brownington's family. Do you have any understanding of whether they are actually connected to the family, or any concerns about whether they might not be?
So we have not looked into the identity verification that this particular site uses. So I don't know whether there is sufficient cause to believe that they are. On the other hand, I also don't know that there are any reasons to disbelieve it. I would think that the family, if somebody was pirating this, so to speak, they probably would have said something by now.
Have you reached out to this particular company, try to call them or contact them to see if they take it down?
Yeah, we sent a letter.
Attorney General
Any response from that at all? Or-
Not yet. We just sent it.
So you don't know if they may be open to that?
Yeah, I'd love to see them do that.
So under the campaign of this particular one, it says prohibited campaigns, it says benefit groups that support physical violence of any kind. Are you guys trying to make that argument that in this case it fits in that role?
Well, look, these kinds of things are first of all, is that the GoFundMe rules or?
Just want to get set up.
That's there, okay. It is not necessarily that we're making the argument, although I think that you can make that argument. These are internal terms of service. They get to choose whether they live by them. They are not enforceable in the sense of I can go in and compel them to live up to their own terms of service.
So Attorney General Yost, this money is presumably being raised to present a defense for someone who is accused of a crime. How can you be against someone trying to get the best defense possible?
Well, for starters, if you read the page, that's not what it says. It says that they're raising money for the decisions the family may have to make. I don't know what that means. It certainly seems quite a bit broader than we're trying to raise money. But the bottom line is that I think it should be the policy of Ohio that crowdfunding platforms are not permitted to raise money on the backs of a notorious and disgusting crime, period.
But it is a crime that is being accused, not convicted.
And you know what?
So he's just trying to get a defense and raise money for the defense of a crime.
Well, first of all, that's not what the page says, and I'm going to push back on your bad facts. But beyond the bad facts, there's a constitutional right to have a crime, or to have a defense against a crime, and the city of Cincinnati and the county of Hamilton and the state of Ohio are going to provide an indigent defendant with the resources to do that if they're unable to provide it for themselves. That's different than going out on the street and using technology to crowdfund nationally. I think that it's a horrible use of the charitable system, and I'm against it.
It would be a little trickier though, even though what you're saying is, because I was looking at this myself and it never really mentions defense fund that I could see in there. Doesn't that make it trickier if they kind of allude to the fact that we're trying to help his mental health, and couldn't people get around any kind of like reasonable, I can see how a company can make a policy like that, but it's difficult. Wouldn't it be difficult for a state to make a policy? Because now you got to sort out whether they're trying to make a defense fund or some medical issue. Does that make it more difficult?
The only reason anybody cares about this is the violent crime that was committed and the way that it is being whipped up by some people into a cause celeb. So no, I think that the accusation of the violent crime is sufficient to say the crowdfunding doesn't go here.
If for any reason, even if it's a mental health reason.
Even if it's mental health,
Even if they're
where did
raising
that?
money, say, to treat his mental health or something like that. That's almost what this kind of indicates when I look at that, you know. And I was also interested in what the family can do that you can't, you know.
Well, they have a private right of action for the wrongful death if
Get
they're.
into that, but I was curious of how you would address this other part of it.
Yeah,
And trying to weed out, well, here's somebody saying, well, there's a medical condition, you know, to make that fit, all the standards that you would have to for a law would be difficult, wouldn't it?
I disagree. Now, obviously, that's why we have a legislature. The Attorney General does not write and pass laws. And I'm sure that some of these questions would be debated. But this would be a fairly easy law to write, that crowdfunding is not available if you're a criminal defendant. And it's a bright line rule that would be easily enforceable. Now, you might ask, is that wise? Or should there be exceptions to it? I don't think so. I think that if you've been accused of killing a cop deliberately, which is what happened here, that's your first order of business. Everything else is secondary, and the public has a right to want to intervene in how you're going to raise money from every sympathetic person across the country. It's going to make this very asymmetric.
And we were curious about what, you said you might have some avenues to approach this as well.
Thank you. General Yost should be applauded for stepping forward to address this. He's limited with the tools available to him as Attorney General. The family isn't so limited. There is a clear public policy in Ohio. No one is allowed to profit from their criminal acts. One of the fundraisers on this Give, Send, Go campaign is the defendant's wife. That's his family directly profiting. Now, it's not up to the Attorney General or the legislature to dig in and see where that money went, how it was spent. Was it used for counsel? Was it used for something else? The family, through private action, can delve into those issues. There's something more, and I think it's especially repugnant. Give, Send, Go makes money off every penny donated into these crowdfunding campaigns. They are commercially profiting off the murder of this deputy. That's repugnant. That should be outlawed. Our legislature should take action to prevent that and make sure that's not available to commercially profit off the death of an officer killed in the line of duty. So the family will be taking steps to delve into those issues. You're right, criminal defendants are entitled to a defense. That's not what these pages say they're for. There's no accountability about how these funds are distributed. And let's not kid ourselves, they're not under oath when they write out those blurbs on Give, Send, Go. They can write whatever they want to circumvent and use the argument, circumvent this public policy and use the argument you just raised about this is for my criminal defense. I guarantee you this money is not being used for criminal defense dollars. So we'll find out.
Mental health.
Yeah, or mental health, right? So,
My name's Tom Bruns. I'm one of co-counsel with Zach here. And one of the things I'd like to point out, and I understand the concerns you raised by your question, but you know that old saying, when people tell you who they are, believe them. These comments on Give, Send, Go are unbelievable, despicable, atrocious. And Give, Send, Go knows that's the comment people are leaving on their site, and they're accepting this money and taking a fee from it. This is not the example that's defensible, right? So sometimes you get a law and you pass a law and there are unintended consequences. Not this case. You cannot defend these donations as they exist, as the donors are expressing themselves on Give, Send, Go.
I'd like to actually address that. Is there a police officer that can step up to answer a question? Representing?
maybe if you tell us the question, they would decide whether to step up.
It's about this very thing, some of the comments that have been made on, by the donors on these sites, on this site particularly.
What particular comment are you going for?
There are a lot of them, but not the least of which, there's one that says, a guy that gave $5 says death to all pigs.
Death to all Nazis, right? That comment, I saw that.
Another one that says copycats, you know what to do.
Yep. That's, and so gives it,
This is why I would like a police officer to address,
But-
when they see that kind of thing, what goes through their minds.
I'll step aside, but before I do, let me finish with one more thing. Give, Send, Go has rules for service, terms of business, where they have guidelines for what they will and will not accept on their platform. Those comments you just read, and many more just like them, are a clear violation of their own terms of service that they do not enforce. Under the law, if you assume a duty, you fulfill that duty or you face consequences for not doing so. So, with that said, I don't know if there's another officer or somebody who wants to step up and speak to it.
I'll walk up and say something. I'm not prepared to speak outside of what I said about the family, but, you're talking about hate rhetoric that we deal with every day of our life. This is no different than anything. If we block that out and we don't worry about that, because every day we do our job, we're dealing with hate across this country. And it doesn't matter whether it's a result of this crime or any other crime. So it doesn't change anything with us.
There are also things in here that say that are clearly a group of people who feel like they've been for decades or hundreds of years wronged. An eye for an eye. We will no longer tolerate racial terrorists. We can only take so much. As the mom of a young black boy, it's my worst fear. Stop killing our kids. These types of things. That's got to evoke an emotion when you hear this.
Well, it doesn't, because we deal with it every day. It's just what we deal with in our job on a day-to-day basis. We don't drive down the street and everybody waves us with a full hand. There's hatred toward us, and we know that. You can ask any policeman up here, they deal with the same thing. If we let our emotions get the best of us when we're dealing with the public, we're not doing our job. Everybody in life has biases, right? And you identify your biases, and you got to let things go when you do your job. Our priority is to provide service to this public, whether the public likes us or doesn't like us.
Let me just add that this is two separate cases. So the people are responding to the use of force critical incident involving Ryan Hinton. That is completely different than what we're talking about here today. If Ryan Hinton, who is tragically gone from us at a very early age, if there's a website, if there's a funding page for him to help with his funeral expenses, to help his family, that's a different kind of thing than what we're talking about here today. Why all of us are here is because his father used his motor vehicle as a deadly weapon and killed a man who had nothing to do with this while he was on duty as a law enforcement officer. That's what's not okay. Now let's not conflate these two issues. And you in the media can and should help educate the public that these are not the same case. In spite of the fact that there's a father and son relationship, there's two different sets of actions and two different reasons for raising money. And the latter one is contrary to the public interest.
I see what you're saying, the distinction there, but once the family has the money, they can pretty much do what they want to with that money.
Particularly under the broad rubric of this particular page.
Was it? Yeah, I know, it says that, but once the money goes to this family, if they had more than enough to cover the family expenses, assuming that's what they actually needed the money for, or this is actually who's raising the money, we don't even know who's raising this money. Once they get that money, you've got two separate pages, one family, that funnel, you can't stop that. That's the problem with the funnel. I mean, this one seems to be okay. They want to raise money to save money for the funeral expense. This one, they're trying to use it as money to, defend the guy who's accused of killing the deputy. The same family's getting the same money. And that's where it becomes difficult to unwrap that fishing line, isn't it?
So the first one is not benefiting from the murder of a police officer. The second one is. And I
This is
think,
what they're saying.
and this is where the public interest of the state of Ohio comes in.
I guess I don't understand why, if we have Son of Sam laws, and you're saying as the description, the Give, Send, Go site, the description you say doesn't say that this is for the defense, that it's for the wife of the guy who was being accused of killing a cop. Why is that not something that you can take action against if it is profiting from a alleged crime.
The Son of Sam law, which we can provide you a copy of, and you'll see it, is very specific about the nature of the contract that is involved. It has to be a contract for telling the story, expressing the experience in some way. It's designed for TV rights, movie rights, books, and that sort of thing. The situation here is narrow enough that it doesn't fall within the sweep of that law, which was created before we even had crowdfunding, to be honest. It's a 1990s vintage law.
I was wondering with suggesting that Ohio lawmakers tackle crowdsourced funding in cases like this, what kind of constitutionality issues do you foresee there? And especially kind of going to the point of people paying money for something that they know that they're putting themselves into, even if there's misinformation out there. It's like they've made that choice to pay their money for that campaign unless there's some kind of, fraud, waste, or abuse being reported. I guess that's what I'm kind of asking. It's like, how do you balance those out?
Well, look, you couldn't crowd fundraise to raise money to buy methamphetamine for everybody. You couldn't fundraise to poison the water. There are all kinds of reasons why the public interest would limit freedom of action. So the voluntariness of this doesn't particularly bother me. The constitutional question is a good one. And under the First Amendment, the state, the government may regulate speech if there is a compelling governmental interest and that it is narrowly tailored. Now that's called strict scrutiny, and the joke amongst lawyers is strict in theory, fatal in fact. But there are moments where a law will pass strict scrutiny. I think this is one of them. And recognize that we have long regulated fundraising, charitable organizations and charitable fundraising, and it is perfectly within the bounds of the Constitution. That's what I'm asking for here, is a reasonable rule, a common sense rule that will reflect that.
Are you seeking to partner with a legislator or legislators?
I haven't gotten that far. I don't know if Zach has talked with any legislators at this point or not.
I have. I can address that. There's a state representative, Cindy Abrams, who's been a strong proponent for law enforcement. And there's another state representative here locally named Michael Odioso. I've spoken with Mr. Odioso about a legislative amendment or new action modifying the current Son of Sam law or passing new legislation. He has informed me that he's been in touch with Cindy Abrams and they're working on it jointly to come up with that legislation. So, excuse me.
At this time, we're going to conclude. If there's any follow-up questions, please reach out to the Attorney General's office from a communication standpoint. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate your interest in the topic.
Thank you.